Hey, I'm Morgan Gold of Goldshaw Farm, and today I'm gonna build a shed as fast as I possibly can.
What do you think about that, Toby? Do you think I'm gonna be able to do it? Huh? You think I can do it? How about you, Geese? What's your opinion? What do you think? Do you think I can do it? You don't even care, do ya?
So I need to build a new brooder for my ducklings, goslings, and chicks. And after doing a bunch of research, I figured out that the easiest and most cost-effective way to do it is by using one of those shed kits. You guys know the kits I'm talking about, the ones that you see online that are like 50 bucks and they say you don't need to make any angle cuts and it makes it really easy to build a shed. Like this one that I got right here from my friends over at 2x4 Basics. Based on the way they're marketed, these kits seem to make you think that you could just throw a shed together in the matter of a couple of hours. And so I've decided to try to put that to the test and see if it's possible. So come along with me and let's get started. So there were two things that I actually did to make my job a little bit easier and go a little bit smoother today for this video. First off, what I did was I actually pre-cut all the lumber. So if you're looking for an honest accounting of how much time this actually takes me, it was about an hour to cut all the pieces of lumber and get it all situated and set. It was pretty easy and straightforward to make all the cuts. The kit comes with like a little guide that lays everything out pretty clearly. While I was making all my cuts, I actually took the time to like label every single piece that I made. That way when I'm starting to put it all together, I'm not having to like remeasure and figure out which piece is which and just waste a whole bunch of time. The second thing I did before I started to build this is I put down the platform, just because that actually took me several hours. It was a combination of digging and measuring and making sure everything was perfectly level, but now you can see it's actually all nicely stitched together. And so now I have a good solid platform ready to build on. Again, if you're trying to do your accounting of time and planning of your time, I would say that this probably took me about 3 hours or so to get everything pulled together, perfectly level, perfectly even, get all the things together, get the OSB down, do everything that I possibly needed to do to build this platform. And so yeah, I'd say probably 3, maybe 4 hours. But that also depends on what you're dealing with. Given the fact that I'm here in the rolling landscape of Vermont, it probably took me more time than other people. Things are much less level in general, and on top of it all, just a lot rockier. So just plan to build that platform. But beyond that, I got my lumber cut, got my platform built, and I got my little handy dandy set of instructions. So let's start building. The process for assembling this shed is pretty straightforward. First, you're gonna have to put up the walls, and then you're gonna have to put together the rafters, and you kind of build a box. And then what you're gonna do is sort of flush it all in. Putting up the walls was kind of straightforward. There's like these little metal triangle-ish type things that you put 2 screws in the kind of vertical beam and then 3 screws into the floorboards. And it holds up okay. I found that I had to like prop them up a lot using other pieces of wood, and several different times they would actually tip over, which I gotta say is one of the more frustrating things about this. Usually if I were to try to approach building a shed or some sort of building, I would build the walls and then flip it up and then tie them all together. But this had you sort of building the walls vertically. And so getting everything to slot appropriately into the metal brackets and getting everything to stand straight and be level and you know, plumb, it was really kind of hard. And maybe hard's a little bit of an exaggeration. Maybe it's fair only to say that it was tricky. But regardless, it was something I was constantly having to contend with the walls tipping over. would rate the instructions of the shed kit as kind of mediocre to poor. No written instructions. They're all sort of that graphical build an IKEA piece of furniture type of instruction. Challenge is too, there was instructions for the 7x8 building, which is what I built, versus the I think it was like 8x16 and then like an 8x24 or something like that. So you can make it bigger and bigger if you want. Well, in the instructions they did this really lazy thing where they intermingled the 7x8 and the larger building structures, and so I was constantly having to check to see if I was on the right step for the building I was building. Like, you can see what I mean. Like, it's like, all right, this step is not for the 7x8 building, it's only for the 8x14 or the 10x22. Then it's like, you know, these steps are for all three of them, and you know, the X represents different widths for the different things. It kind of speaks to my biggest complaint with a lot of manufacturers' instructions, where they try to do the bare minimum versus just write it out and it'd be explicit about it. You know, if I was actually a better builder myself, I probably would have tried to make this video a how-to, because I'm sure it would have helped a lot of people along the way. For those of you watching this video, in full disclosure, I'd really only describe my construction capability as like adequate maybe at this point. About 3 years ago, I would have said my construction capability was completely inept. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have admitted to being the guy who paid other people to build their IKEA furniture. Getting the rafters up and getting everything tied together was not too bad. When I built my duck house, I struggled with getting those rafters cut and getting them cut the right way. And that's actually ultimately why I opted for the shed kit, because I wasn't gonna have to do like bird's mouth cuts or anything weird like that. But I gotta say, it was still tricky, and the metal pieces, the metal brackets, you know, number one, the metal on these things is no joke. I just sliced my thumb pushing one down just a little bit for screwing in. But then number two, they're also just kind of flimsy, and so I found that a number of times I was bending them, pieces of lumber would fall over sometimes. It was hard to sometimes like wedge and get the 2x4s right into the slot perfectly. Things weren't like exactly perfectly aligned. I found that I was constantly having to like finesse the pieces of wood and maybe like trim off a little bit here and there just to get it exactly right so that I could slot it into place perfectly. Overall, it's taken me about 4 hours or so to build this entire structure. It's looking pretty good. I've got my shed all framed out, and to be able to frame a shed out in like 4 hours plus what, another hour for cutting lumber, and I don't know, another 3 hours for doing the platform, 3 or 4 hours. And so to be able to get a whole building like that together in about a day, that's not bad, especially for one person working solo. Even though I built this entire thing alone, I would advise against it. There were several sections where if I had a second pair of hands, it would have gone so much easier and so much quicker. I think if 2 people were working on this, you could probably throw this thing up here and all together like in about 4.5, 5 hours, like the 2 of you working together. Overall, I'm pretty darn pleased with how it turned out. I'm a little annoyed that certain parts aren't exactly perfect, and there's some edges to smooth over. I'm also a little frustrated that the kit made some of the framing actually a little less than ideal, and I feel like if I'd been just cutting things myself and doing angle cuts, I probably could have gotten just a little bit better. For those who are wondering, the kit I used was from 2x4 Basics. You can find an Amazon link for it down below. There's also the Easy Frame kit, which based on all the reviews I've read is basically the same thing. What I'm doing here is building a brooder, and so this is going to be customized so that I can raise little baby goslings and ducklings and chicks inside a little structure. It's going to have heat lamps, special places for water. I'm also going to put like a little run out there so that when they're like teenage birds, like 3-4 weeks old, I can give them exposure to fresh pasture. I like this kit for a brooder because the floor space is about 56 square feet. So that much square footage is going to give you the ability to house a number of birds. All in all, this brooder is only going to cost me a couple $100s to build. And so that's why I really wanted to go with something simple, cheap, and flexible. I'm constantly trying to refine the system that I'm using to raise my ducks and geese here on the farm. And so by not over investing and having some flexible, cheap infrastructure, it's allowing me to refine my process and get better and better in terms of how I raise the animals without over investing and over committing myself to one direction or another. I expect a few years out from now, I'm going to be much more like rigid with what I do, and I'm going to be investing much more in the infrastructure that I use. But at this stage of the game, I think it'd be silly to try to dive right in because I don't know exactly what I want right now. So maintaining some flexibility and maintaining an ability to evolve and adapt and improve my systems, it's just really important to me right now on my farm. And I will show you guys what I end up doing as I try to finish off this structure. But until then, you guys should check out this video. It's pretty cool, and I think you'll enjoy it.